Vladimir Putin is the second longest currently serving European president after Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko. After a 15-year stint with the KGB, Putin held various other jobs before former President Boris Yeltsin appointed him prime minister in 1999. Later that same year, on December 31st, Yeltsin unexpectedly resigned.
Сегодня, в последний день уходящего века, я ухожу в отставку.
According to the Constitution of Russia, Putin became acting president of the Russian Federation. Yeltsin's resignation resulted in the presidential elections being held on March 26, 2000. Putin won in the first round with 53% of the vote. On March 14, 2004, Putin was elected to the presidency for a second term, this time receiving 71% of the vote. Putin was banned from a third consecutive term by the Constitution. In a power-switching operation on May 8, 2008, First Deputy Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev was elected his successor. Only a day after handing the presidency to Medvedev, Putin was appointed Prime Minister of Russia, maintaining his political dominance. Then, he assumed the presidential position once again on March 4, 2012. Putin won the 2012 Russian presidential election in the first round, with 63.6% of the vote, despite widespread accusations of vote rigging. Putin even changed the Russian constitution so that he could run for president multiple times, which means he could be in power until 2036. Putin's rule characterizes by endemic corruption, repression of political opponents, and the intimidation and suppression of independent media in Russia. Also, Putin's critics have a long history of disappearing under suspicious or mysterious circumstances. For example, Natalia Estemirova, a Russian journalist, teacher, as well as human rights activist, and board member of the Russian human rights organization Memorial. Estemirova was abducted by unknown persons on 15 July 2009 around 8:30 a.m. from her home in Grozny, Chechnya, as she was working on extremely sensitive cases of human rights abuses in Chechnya. Two witnesses reported they saw Estemirova being pushed into a car, shouting that she was being abducted. Her remains were found with bullet wounds in the head and chest area at 4:30 p.m. in woodland close to the federal road Kavkaz, near the village of Gazi Yurt in Ingushetia, a republic of Russia located in the North Caucasus of Eastern Europe. Or the case of Alexander Litvinenko, a former Russian intelligence officer who defected to the West. Litvinenko died in London weeks after drinking tea, which was later found to have been laced with the deadly radioactive compound polonium-210. The Kremlin has denied any involvement in Litvinenko's death. However, some say Litvinenko's death is part of a deliberate policy to liquidate defectors. It probably isn't outlandish to say that Vladimir Putin is the most hated man in the world right now. Many would want to see him dead. Vladimir Putin has made plenty of enemies throughout his long political career. Being in the top political office for that length of time can mean that there are even more opportunities to have a target on your back. So far, the Russian authorities and the media have reported about a dozen official cases of attacks on the life of the Russian president. However, the exact number of attempts made on Putin's life is not confirmed. What do we know about the assassination attempts of Vladimir Putin, and how did he survive them? The first known attempt to assassinate the Russian president happened during the funeral of Anatoly Sobchak in St. Petersburg on February 24, 2000, but the Federal Guard Service was there to protect him. Sobchak was one of the men who, along Gorbachev and Yeltsin, helped bring about the end of the Soviet Union. He was also the reformer who plucked a middle-ranking KGB officer by the name of Vladimir Putin from obscurity and gave him his first job in politics. According to Sergei Divistov, the then press secretary for the Federal Guard Service responsible for protecting the president, a certain organization related to Chechen terrorists planned to liquidate Vladimir Putin, which was to hire 2 snipers for the murder. That same year, there was another attempted assassination that was prevented by security forces. The second attack on Vladimir Putin was to take place during an unofficial meeting of the heads of the Commonwealth of Independent States on August 18 and August 19, 2000 in Yalta. Putin's car was allegedly planned to be blown up on the way to the summit site. Although the documents about this remain classified, several people have been arrested in connection with the event, 4 Chechens and 2 Middle Eastern nationals. In 2002, Putin was once again in danger The assassination attempt was to have been made during President Putin's official visit to Azerbaijan on January 9th and 10th, 2002. 3 months prior to Putin's arrival in Baku, Azeri security agencies received information on the plans to kill the Russian president during his upcoming visit to Azerbaijan. About 10 days before the start of the visit, the Azeri security agencies had learned about the delivery of explosives to Azerbaijan. According to a statement by Namik Abbasov, head of the Azeri National Security Ministry, the Iraqi citizen Kayanin Rostam is believed to have intended to carry out the attempt. Rostam was reported to have spent some time in training camps in Afghanistan and had links to Chechen rebels. Consequently, Kayanin Rostam, the recipient of the explosives, was taken into custody. In January 2002, Rostam was tried and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Just 1 month later, in February 2002, there was another threat, but this time it was up close and personal. A 38-year-old man named Ivan Zaitsev drove into the Kremlin complex and jumped out of his car to talk to security members. The man said, "My name is Ivan Zaitsev. I'm the president of Russia. Now take me to Vladimir Putin." The surprise security team checked his documents and then sent Zaitsev to receive an evaluation at a nearby hospital. Interestingly, Zaitsev had attempted the same thing in 2001, and both times had enthusiastically told people he wanted to kill Putin. He told psychiatrists that Putin was bringing Nazism to Russia and that he was an undercover spy. "I've got to cut Putin's head off," he wrote in his diary. He was convinced that he was avenging his brother, who had died by beheading some years before. The next attacks were also to be carried out by mentally ill people. A resident of Udmurtia, who in November 2002 stopped his minibus by the headquarters of the Federal Security Service on Lubyanka Square. He stated that the car was loaded with explosives and demanded a meeting with Putin. Behind the next attack was a disabled pensioner from Tatarstan who sent a letter to Putin with a white powder. The powder turned out to be flour. After this incident, the pensioner went missing. The next attempt came also in November 2002, when Putin was supposed to be driving along the Reblyovo-Uspenskoye highway, right near the Kremlin headquarters. There were a group of people who claimed they were installing new signboards on the highway. Just hours later, a media outlet reported that the police had found 40 kilos of explosives set to detonate along the highway. Vladimir Putin's car was rerouted. To this day, officials refuse to comment on this matter and deny that it ever took place. Something very similar happened the next year. In June of 2003, President Putin was supposed to be heading a highway connecting St. Petersburg and Pskov. This time, police found a poorly made bomb hidden in a bag. Once again, no one was harmed, and Russian officials denied that the situation ever happened. In 2008, a man from Tajikistan wanted to shoot Putin and then Russian President Dmitry Medvedev while walking in Red Square. The man, however, was detained several hours before the attempt was made. According to the Russian authorities, the next attempt to kill Vladimir Putin was made in 2012. Russian authorities accuse Adam Osmayev of being part of an Islamic rebels' plot to kill Vladimir Putin with a bomb in central Moscow. He was arrested in February 2012 in Odessa and charged with planning an attack on Putin on behalf of the terrorist Doku Umarov, operating in North Caucasus. The Ukrainian government, headed by President Viktor Yanukovych, which was overthrown in January 2014, planned to hand over Osmayev to Russia. However, following a recommendation from the European Court of Human Rights, the extradition procedure was suspended.